You're standing in the grocery aisle again, frozen, staring at two cans of tomatoes, same brand, same price. One is slightly dented, the other has a label that's peeling at the corner. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, but your brain is already calculating the odds that the dented one might have microscopic contamination, that the peeling label suggests improper storage conditions, that this choice, this stupid, meaningless choice, could ripple outward into food poisoning, a missed workday, a disappointed boss, a derailed promotion, a financial spiral, a life you didn't plan for. Your hand hovers in the air. You can feel your pulse in your fingertips. The fluorescent lights buzz overhead with that specific frequency that makes your teeth ache. You've been here for 4 minutes. 4 minutes deciding between two identical cans of crushed tomatoes because somewhere deep in the animal cortex of your brain, you believe that if you just think hard enough, calculate precisely enough, you can engineer a future where nothing bad happens, where you control the outcome, where you are safe. This is the sickness. This is the cage. And Adam Fawer built an entire novel to show you the bars. Fawer doesn't write like other thriller authors. He's not interested in entertaining you. Improbable is a trap disguised as a story, a conceptual machine designed to make you recognize the horror of your own mind. David Caine is not a hero. He's a warning label on a bottle you've already swallowed. Caine is a gambler, a man whose life is constructed entirely around probability, and he suffers from seizures that are triggered by the act of calculating odds. Let that sink in. His superpower is also his execution method. When he tries to see the future, when he attempts to pass the statistical landscape of possible outcomes, his brain short-circuits and he convulses on the floor, tasting copper and feeling his consciousness fracture into 1,000 parallel timelines. Fawer gives him this ability not as a gift, but as a punishment for the original sin of modern existence, the belief that we can think our way to certainty. The novel introduces Laplace's demon, and this is where the architecture gets truly suffocating. In the early 19th century, Pierre-Simon Laplace imagined a hypothetical intelligence that knew the precise location and momentum of every atom in the universe. To this demon, the past and future would be transparent, a single unbroken chain of cause and effect stretching from the Big Bang to the heat death of everything. No mystery, no deviation, no free will. Just mechanical causality dressed up in the costume of choice. Laplace's demon doesn't need to predict the future because, from its perspective, the future has already happened. It's encoded in the present arrangement of matter. You are a configuration of particles obeying physical laws. Your decision to read this script, to pause it, to close the tab, to feel anxious or bored or seen, all of it was determined the moment the universe began. You think you're choosing, you're not. You're happening. David Caine becomes a man who can glimpse what the demon sees. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to shatter him. He doesn't gain freedom through this power. He loses it. Because once you start seeing the probability fields, once you map the branching paths of every micro-decision, you become paralyzed by the weight of infinite outcomes. You become incapable of acting because every action is a calculated risk, and every risk can be dissected into finer and finer gradations of danger until movement itself feels like suicide. Fawer understands that information is not liberation. Information is a new kind of prison. The more data you collect, the more variables you track, the more you optimize and strategize and plan, the less alive you become. You stop being a person. You become a probability engine running simulations in a meat chassis. This is the nightmare we're already living. You know this. You feel it every time you check your phone for the 7th time in 10 minutes, refreshing an email that hasn't arrived, staring at the read receipt that confirms they saw your message but chose not to respond. You're calculating. What did I say wrong? What does the delay mean? Are they angry, indifferent, busy, dead? You construct elaborate models of their internal state based on response time, punctuation choices, the presence or absence of an emoji. You are Laplace's demon in miniature, trying to reverse engineer causality from insufficient data, and it's killing you. The anxiety isn't coming from the uncertainty. It's coming from your refusal to accept uncertainty. You're trying to collapse the waveform of possibility into a single, knowable outcome, and the effort is breaking your mind. We have built entire industries around this compulsion. Predictive algorithms, risk assessment models, data analytics, life optimization frameworks, productivity hacks. We track our sleep cycles, our caloric intake, our screen time, our steps, our heart rate variability, our REM percentages, believing that if we just gather enough metrics, we can engineer a life without failure. We can become the demon. We can see the future. But here's the thing Fawer keeps whispering through the pages of Improbable. The future you calculate is not the future you live. The map is not the territory. The model is not the world. And the act of observation changes the system. You cannot stand outside your own life and manipulate it like a puzzle. You are inside the experiment. You are the variable. And the moment you try to control everything, you strangle the very thing that makes existence bearable. Caine's seizures are a biological metaphor for what happens when a human being tries to process too much certainty. The brain isn't designed for it. We are designed to operate in fog, to make decisions with incomplete information, to act on instinct, on hunch, on the irrational and unquantifiable sense that something feels right, even when the spreadsheet says it's wrong. Certainty is neurologically toxic. It's why people who achieve total clarity often describe it as a kind of death. The mystics, the depressed, the LSD casualties, who saw the machinery behind the curtain and couldn't unsee it. They all report the same thing. When you know too much, when you see the strings, you stop caring. Why eat if digestion is just chemical reaction? Why love if bonding is oxytocin and dopamine? Why choose if choice is an illusion projected by deterministic neurons firing in predetermined sequences? Fawer doesn't offer comfort. He doesn't give you a way out. He just holds up the mirror and makes you look. The novel's plot involves conspiracies, secret organizations, advanced neuroscience, all the machinery of a thriller. But the real story is happening inside Caine's skull. It's the slow realization that his power is actually powerlessness, that seeing probabilities doesn't give him agency. It reveals the absence of agency. He's not playing the game better. He's seeing that the game is rigged, that the dice are loaded, that the house always wins, because the house is the universe, and the universe doesn't care about his spreadsheets. And here's where it gets worse. The trap isn't just in Caine's head, it's in yours. Right now, reading this, you're trying to calculate whether this script is worth your time. You're running background simulations. Is this going to give me useful information? Will it make me feel something? Should I keep listening or skip ahead? What if I miss something important? What if I waste 14 more minutes on something that doesn't pay off? You're doing it. The Laplace calculation, the risk assessment, the desperate attempt to optimize your experience before you've even had it. You can't help it. We've been trained to do this. We've been taught that life is a series of investments and returns, that every moment should be leveraged for maximum value, that uncertainty is inefficiency and inefficiency is failure. But let me tell you something about uncertainty. Let me tell you the secret that Fawer buries in the quantum mechanics discussions and the neuroscience jargon. Uncertainty is the only proof you're still alive. It's the only evidence that you exist as something more than a calculation. The Heisenberg Uncertainty Principle isn't just a physics curiosity about subatomic particles. It's a philosophical statement about the nature of reality. You cannot know both the position and momentum of a particle with perfect precision. The act of measuring one disrupts the other. The universe, at its most fundamental level, refuses to be pinned down. It refuses to be known completely. And that refusal is what allows anything to happen at all. If Laplace's demon were real, if determinism were absolute, then even the illusion of choice would be impossible. But the universe is broken at the base. It stutters, it glitches, it leaves room for the unmeasurable, the unpredictable, the wild. That break is where you live. Caine's seizures are his body's rejection of certainty. They're a biological rebellion against the attempt to reduce existence to math. And every time he collapses, every time his neurons fire in chaotic patterns and his consciousness dissolves into static, he's experiencing the same thing you experience when you finally stop calculating and just act. That moment when you send the text without rereading it 12 times. When you take the job without modeling every possible outcome. When you kiss someone without running a cost-benefit analysis of emotional exposure. That moment is a seizure. It's a short circuit. It's the part of you that refuses to be data. Fawer builds the novel around the idea of probability-induced visions, Caine seeing futures branch and collapse. But the real horror isn't what he sees. It's what he loses. He loses the ability to be surprised. He loses the ability to be wrong in a way that matters. He loses the ability to fail spectacularly, to make mistakes that reshape his understanding of himself. Because when you know the odds, when you've calculated the risks, failure stops being transformation and starts being statistical inevitability. You didn't fail. The numbers failed. You didn't choose wrong. You just got unlucky. There's no growth in that. No meaning, just regression to the mean. And we're doing this to ourselves constantly. We're outsourcing our instincts to algorithms. We're letting apps tell us who to date, what to watch, what to buy, where to eat, how to feel. We're feeding the demon. We're building it one data point at a time, surrendering our uncertainty to the cloud, believing that somewhere in the server farms, some intelligence will optimize our lives into coherence. But optimization is the opposite of life. Life is messy. Life is inefficient. Life is the choice you make knowing it might be wrong. The risk you take without a safety net, the moment you step into the unknown not because you've calculated it's safe, but because you're willing to be destroyed by it. Caine's real enemy isn't the shadowy organization trying to weaponize probability. It's his own mind, his addiction to control, his belief that if he just thinks hard enough, he can avoid pain. But pain isn't a bug. Pain is the signal that you're still participating in something you can't predict. Grief is proof that you love something outside your control. Anxiety is proof that you care about an outcome you can't engineer. Regret is proof that you acted in a world that doesn't come with undo buttons. These aren't failures of calculation. These are confirmations of presence. The modern obsession with productivity, with life hacks, with getting things done, with maximizing every waking hour, it's all just Laplace's demon wearing a Fitbit. It's the same compulsion dressed in motivational language. We're terrified of wasted time because wasted time is uncertain time. It's time that doesn't generate measurable value, time that doesn't move us toward a goal, time that just exists without justification. And that kind of time is the only time that actually belongs to us. The moment you stop optimizing, you start living. The moment you stop predicting, you start experiencing. The moment you accept that you cannot know the outcome, you become free to participate in the process. Fawer's novel is brutal because it doesn't lie to you. It doesn't tell you that Caine's power saves him. It doesn't tell you that knowledge is power. It shows you that knowledge is weight, that the more you know, the less you move. That the dream of perfect information is a nightmare of perfect stasis. The only way out is to stop looking for the way out. To accept that you're standing in the grocery aisle holding 2 cans of tomatoes, and it genuinely, cosmically, absolutely does not matter which one you choose because the universe is indifferent to your spreadsheet and your life will unfold in ways you cannot model, and that unknowability is not a curse. It's the condition of being. You will never see all the variables. You will never calculate all the risks. You will never know enough to make a perfect decision, and that's not a problem to solve. That's the structure of existence. The demon is a fantasy. Certainty is a drug. Control is a delusion we swallow to avoid the vertigo of freedom. And the vertigo is the point. The falling is the point. The not knowing what happens next is the only thing that makes what happens next matter. So drop the can. Either can. Walk away. Stop refreshing the email. Stop running the simulation. Stop trying to predict whether this relationship will work, whether this career move is optimal, whether this choice will lead to regret or relief. You don't know. You will never know. And the moment you stop pretending you can know, the moment you step into the seizure of uncertainty, is the moment you stop being a probability engine and start being human again. Fawer built this trap to show you the bars. Now you have to choose whether to keep calculating the distance between them or finally admit you can slip through.